Shalom Aleichem to everybody. This is after 2 weeks, so a real hearty Shalom Aleichem. Wonderful to be here with you, and it was wonderful to be in Eretz Yisrael for those days. Parshas Mishpatim that we're going to read in Shul this coming Shabbos. A lot of laws over there, a lot to learn. I wanted to concentrate on a certain type of laws, which the Torah talks about at great length, and those are laws of damages. If we damage somebody's property, we have to pay for it. It's called nezikin, damaging. And the Torah, like I said, talks about all different types of damages, and I wanted to discuss some of them tonight. So some people maybe won't be too much of a new kind of concept if they studied the Talmud, certain texts of the Talmud, like Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra, different sections of the Talmud that discusses at great length about paying for damages. And some people might be surprised to hear some of the details of the type of payment the person to make. So let's talk about, according to the first Mishnah and tractate of Baba Kama, that there discuss 4 types of damages a person has to pay for. Some of them are not too in our life circumstances to pay. Sometimes are very much and are left to pay. The first one talks about is an animal. Your animal, you own an animal, and the animal damages. Of course, the word talks about an ox, different types of farm animals that we don't have today, but we can apply them to our pet animals, a dog or a cat, if they will damage. Let's say a dog will eat somebody else's food. They left it outside, let's say, and the dog came along and ate it. Well, we have to pay for that. And rabbis tell us that the Torah text tells about paying for an animal's damages. There's 3 ways that an animal could damage that we have to pay. One way is if it eats, like I mentioned, it goes on somebody else's property, or even if it's in the outside of the property, and the animal goes and eats somebody else's fruits or vegetables or cake, whatever it might be, we as owners of that animal, we have to pay the person who got the damage. And because we are obligated to watch an animal that we own, not to allow it to damage anybody else's property. So one way to damage is by eating. Another way of damaging is the animal goes, let's say an animal with horns goes and hits somebody with his horns, got angry at somebody, whatever it is, a bad mood, and went after somebody, person or a person's property, another animal. One animal will damage a different person's animal by going ahead and not enjoying the food like but he's angry, whatever it is, angry, a bad mood animal, and goes and gores somebody with his horns or any part of his body. If he uses his foot to kick somebody or crouches down to break something, any damage that does with his body, you have to pay for that too. And the third way to pay for an animal's destruction, if the animal is just walking, not having anything in mind to damage, not eating anything, by walking itself, it steps on somebody else's property, goes and walks on somebody's maybe a computer, when it stepped on the computer and broke it, or any type of glass dishes or whatever it might be. It goes and by walking, even though it doesn't have in mind to damage. It's not like we said before, it gores, goring when animals out to damage. Eating something is enjoying it. The animal doesn't even know what he's doing. He doesn't realize he's damaging. He's just walking normally, but he walked on somebody else's property and damaged the land or damaged the vessels that belong to that person. You have to pay. Because the owner of the animal is obligated to own the animal. You have to watch it from damaging in any of these ways that we're talking about, not either by eating, enjoying the animal enjoys, or by goring, the animal is doing it on purpose just to damage, or the animal is walking without any intent to do any damage altogether. These are three ways that animals can damage, and the owner of the animal will be liable to pay. Putting in today's terms, a dog eating would be the most, of course, if the animal will bite somebody or hurt somebody, he'll have to pay for that too. It's like goring. Or somebody bites somebody, kicks somebody, have to pay. Or if the dog is going along and walking and happens to knock over or spill something that belongs to somebody else, you got to pay. So that's the three ways how a person who owns an animal, livestock, has to be careful about: eating, goring, or walking. That's as far as the animal is concerned. The person who's damaged can take that person to court. The owner of the animal take him to court and make him pay. Of course, if the owner of the pet or the animal watched him and he did the proper things to make sure the animal does not damage somebody, he ties him up, puts him on the chain, and puts it, and doesn't allow the animal to go in, and the animal broke loose in a way that's unusual. It was tied up securely, but the animal was very upset and pulled on it and broke it in a way that was unusual. Then the person who owns the animal is not obligated to pay, since he did the proper shmirah, proper watching of it. And that was something out of the ordinary that we wouldn't expect the animal to do. In that case, a person is potter and doesn't have to pay. That's one of the types of damages we have to pay for. Then we have a bar. Person literally means a pit, a hole. A person will go in a public domain and dig a hole in the street, in the sidewalk, in the street itself. Will dig a hole. And somebody's animal came and fell and got damaged by falling into the pit. Or if a person, under certain circumstances, a person falls in and gets damaged, then the person who dug that pit will have to pay. Because he's a menace. This person had no right to dig a hole in public property, in the street, in the sidewalk, where people, if they want to dig a hole in their own property, it's a different story. But to dig it and where other people go, where people walk, if something happens, then you have to pay for that. Now, don't think it means only for a hole that was made in the ground. That means any type of thing a person can trip on or fall. You put a banana peel, someone slips on it and gets damaged, either an animal or a person under certain circumstances. Or you put a stone in Rishus Rabbim, and some people are not careful about that. They might buy something, some type of food, and like I said, a banana, and just throw the peel on the ground, and where they're walking, you're not allowed to do that. And you're not allowed to cause damages to people. And so people might be eating something, and they had some cookies and threw the wrapper on the ground, somebody slipped on it. Or a person may be you're drinking something, and some of the liquid spilled out on the ground. You have to clean it up. You can't just walk away and leave it there. Somebody could slip on that liquid that because of you, it's on the ground. If you cause it, then you have to clean it up. You can't just walk away. You caused, even though you might not wanted to do it, it wasn't intentionally that you put the water on the ground, but it slipped in your hand, but it comes from you. So you have to go got it to clean it up. You can't just walk away. So this bar that we're talking about is not necessarily the Torah calls it a bar. It calls it a pit that you dug. But we say that's not necessarily meaning that you dug a pit. It means any type of thing that you put in the public domain which somebody can trip on. Person who put it there is obligated to pay the damages of the person who fell there or the person's animal that fell there. It's a obligation. It's a big sin to leave it there, and it's person has to pay for it if damages do occur. Again, if he, let's say, if he put on top of the bar of the pit, he put some boards so somebody should not fall in, and they were secure, and normally nothing would happen to anybody. It'll just walk right over the bar on top of the boards. But if it was not done correctly, the person's liable. Or if it was done correctly, but something out of the ordinary happened to uncover the bar again, so then person is not obligated to pay. Since he covered over the pit that he dug, that he shouldn't have done it, but he did it and he covered it over, and for some freak accident, the cover fell off. He's not obligated to pay. Since he took the proper steps that nothing should happen to anybody, for some freaky accident that got uncovered again, person was not obligated to pay in such a case. That's the only obligated person to pay if he was negligent. He wasn't negligent, he took care of the way that he should have taken care, he is not obligated to pay for that. So that we have again another way of a person to adhere his actions. The first case of an animal, it's not even the person's actions. It's just the fact he owns an animal, he has to be careful, make sure that it doesn't damage. Here, he did an action to put something there, and people fell on it, so he is guilty of causing a person to fall on it or a different animal to fall on it, and therefore he has to pay for it. Even though it was not a direct damage, it was no direct damaging, he just made a hole in the ground and walked away, threw the banana peel on the ground and walked away. It's not a direct action of damage that he did, but still, since he caused it to happen, he is obligated to make sure that's taken care of in a way that should not be a vehicle through some people who can get hurt by it. That's another case. A third case is fire. Person makes a fire. First, he goes in the other person's property and makes a fire. Of course he's chayav. He has to pay. Here is someone, even if he made a fire in his own property, and the fire just went out from his property to somebody else's property. And also something's not direct damage that he did. He just caused it to happen by making it in his own property, and by not watching it, the fire just ate through the part of his property that it started in and went over to somebody else's property. He has to pay for that. Unless he put up a wall, or put up a blockage that the fire shouldn't go out, and for some freak accident the fire went out anyway, then he would not be obligated, since he watched it in a way that was normally nothing should have happened. It's an abnormal, maybe a special wind like today, something that wind that is not usual. When the usual winds are blowing, blew fire out of his property over the wall that he made. Since it's something very unusual for it to happen, that usually if you have the wall there, it shouldn't have gone over to the other person's property, but for some reason, it was an unusual wind. That person doesn't even think that it's going to happen. In a case like that, since he watched it properly, he would not be obligated to pay for it. So there we have these different types of ways that we make a person pay for the damage that he caused. Of course, we have to not overlook other mazik, a person who himself personally causes the damage to somebody. That if he, with his own body, here we're talking about that it was not directly done. An animal, I put in the ground something that caused people to fall, or a fire which made his own private home, short or field, wherever he might have made the fire. These are all damages that are not directly done by a person. Certainly, the person himself who makes a damages to people with his own hands, or any way that he does with his body, he has to pay for it. And we say the other muad la'olam, the person is responsible, even if it happened by accident, that somebody got damaged through him. So we say that he has to pay, unless it's something very far-fetched, totally out of his control, but something that he should have been more careful about, even though he didn't have in mind to damage naturally it wouldn't have allowed to happen if he knew, and it happened by itself, going out. So then we say that he has to pay for it, since he did it with his body. So these are different cases of damaging that Torah is discussing this week's parsha that a person has to take care of. And most damages, he has to pay the full amount of the damage that he caused, that he did or he caused. When it comes to animals, we say that if an animal gored somebody, he has to pay for it. We say if the first 2 times, or maybe 3 times, according to different opinions in the Oorah, the first 2 times he has to pay only half of it. Because animals, if it's not a fierce animal, it's a tame animal that damaged. So he wasn't supposed, didn't have to think about it so much, that the tame animal was going to damage. Sort of not normal. So the first 2 times he only has to pay for half of the damage that he caused, not for the full amount. But if it damaged by the 3rd time or 4th time, according to those opinions, then he'll have to pay a full amount of damage that was caused. And it really depends on how many times and once he did 2 or 3 times. Any time after that, the person will have to pay the full amount of the damage that was caused. Of course, there are a lot of different details that if you study the Gemara that we're not discussing tonight, it's lengthy ideas of damage that the Gemara discusses, but this is an outline of the more or less what the person has to pay. It's interesting to know that we learn from here something totally different from the actual law that we discuss this now. We discussed, we said that an animal who damaged 3 times, so then the first 3 times or 2 times, depending on each opinion of the Gemara, you pay only half, because it's not usual to remember. Once it does, let's say 3 times, so then he has to pay the full amount. So the Torah says if he damaged 3 days, first day, second and third day, and the animal damaged, so it means that already it's used to it. It got used to damage. You see, it's a wild animal, because now it did 3 times. So now, Mr. Owner of the animal, you have to watch your animal from damaging. You see that first time we say, well, it's not usual, so therefore you don't think you have to watch it. But now you see the animals, it became usual. It became there more than once or twice, 3 times. Now you have to be on guard and tie him up and put a fence around him and don't let him wander in the street. Because if you have your dog, went ahead and damaged 3 times already, bit somebody, or ate something up, you have to realize that it became like a wild animal became. And now you have to make sure to watch the animal. So from here we learn a lesson according to some of the great rabbis that we know that what the Gemara says, if it does it 3 different days, you gored the first day, the second, third day. How about if you did all 3 in one day? So do we have to pay the full amount? There's 3 days he did one after the other consecutive days he has to pay. How about if he did it all in one day? So the Gemara says, for sure, if 3 different days he damaged, then he has to pay a full amount. If he does all 3 in one day, you see it was a really wild animal. He's really got used to it, doing it. And now once he gets used to it, so now you have to pay the full amount, even though he did damage 3 times in one day. 3 days in a row, he's obligated to pay. From there, we learn out into a way, the way of the Gemara, just learn out one law from a different law with no connection to it, that we say that a person has to say add certain words to a prayer of a person. Before that we say, like we started saying on Sukkot, Mashav Rechmer Dagoshem, we start have prayer for the rain, because it's a rainy season, especially in Israel. The rainy season is what we call winter over here. They call it the rainy, but we come from ones with snow. The snow is not too frequent to happen, but it's rainy season, which we rely very much on the rain for them to have the crops to grow. So we say special prayer starting from Sukkot till Pesach, that Hashem should bring the rain. If a person forgets to say that prayer, he has to go back and pray over again. 18 brachas that we say, 18 blessings of the Shemon Esrei. We have to add in the beginning Hashem to we praise Hashem for the rain that He gives. So we say in the special prayer in the middle of Shemon Esrei, Hashem give us rain. If a person will forget and not say that prayer, so he has to say the whole Shemon Esrei over again. If he finished the Shemon Esrei and he didn't say it, he has to go all over again. But we say that if it's 3 months that went by and he said Shemon Esrei and forgot if he said the prayer for rain or not, after 90 times, if you say that you got used to saying it, you have to say you don't go back again. If he said that prayer, it was consecutive 90 times, he remembered to say it. So then we say, even though he forgot if he said it, now did he say it? Didn't he? He's not sure. He wasn't thinking about it at the time. So we say that if it's before 90 times, you have to go back again, because you used to saying the davening without saying that prayer. Now you had to add it, and you're not sure if you said it enough, you added it or not. So up to 90 times, we say you're not used to saying it. But once you say 90 times, that means every day for 30 days, you say 3 times a day. So after a month goes by, so we have 30 days, and they say 3 times, I say 3 months before, 30 days, 3 times a day. So we say, at that time, if saying it for 90 times, you don't have to go back anymore. How about if he said 90 times in one day? He wants to make sure that he's not going to forget. So he said 90 times in one day, he's matching him by the Goshen put into the prayer. Because he won't say the whole thing, he just said the beginning of it. Is that good enough? We have to have 30 days to go by 3 times a day, or even 90 times in one day. So the great rabbis say, we'll bring a proof from this law that we just said now, that if he say the animal gored 3 days in a row, we say you have to pay. How about 3 times in one day? So we say, well, let's learn from over there. It comes to have saying 90 times, if you say 30 days consecutively 3 times a day, you have 90 times. If we say all of them in one day, 90 times, so we should say, we learn that from the shark, from the animal, because the animal, if it goes 3 times, 3 different days, we say it has to pay a full amount. So we say, well, did 3 times in one day? Of course, for sure, you see, for sure it's well, if he got used to it. If 3 days, over 3 days he did it, 3 days of times in one day. So we see the same thing over here. If we say by 30 90 times over 30 days, he gets used to it. So 39 days and 1 day for sure gets used to it. Just like by the shore, by the ox who damaged 3 times in 3 days, we say he have to pay the full amount of the damage. So we say, well, he did it all 3 times in 1 day, for sure, you see, as well, he got used to it. So the same thing over here. If you said 90 times, one after the other, consecutively on 30 different days, if you said 9 times in 1 day, for sure he got used to it, for sure he won't have to go back and say it once over again. So it's interesting, that's the way that the Gemara learns out different comparisons to different laws to learn one thing from the other, even if it has no connection whatsoever, but it's an animal damaging, the person is saying a certain prayer. But the principle behind it is the same. If you do something 90 times, we say you get used to it, and whatever amount of times, you put all at one time, 1 day, do you say that it's considered they get used to it? Yes, we see from the Torah said, we said, Lord, the den of the shore. So anyway, so we're saying over here, all these ways are reasons for a person to have to pay for damages that a person causes. Where do we find in the Torah not a lot of damage? We see if the bims you have to pay. We always have a law, a general rule in the Gemara that we don't punish a person unless we warn him first. So where do we warn the person not to damage? If you give a person a death penalty for killing somebody, well, the Torah says don't kill. If you punish a person for stealing, we say you have to be warned about it, don't steal. Since you didn't listen to the warning, we punish you. Well, how about over here, the Torah tells you not a lot of damage? If we say it's obligated to pay, there must be some place that tells you not allowed to do it. So we say that is in the category of, we say that you're not allowed to steal. Now, the same category of stealing is damaging. Because what is stealing? Stealing is you're taking something away from a person that he has. There's a signal, you're not allowed to steal. So we say, included in that is not allowed to damage. Because both have in common, you took away something that belongs to somebody else and you took it away from him. Well, you stole it and it's still around, it wasn't damaged, but you took it away from him, he can't use it anymore. The same way, if you damage somebody's property, he can't use it anymore. So it's all within that law of don't steal, don't damage. And just like by stealing, when the person has to pay for it, the same way a person damages, you're obligated to pay for it. And so many laws are go into what we're saying now that are discussed in the Gemara. Let's say a person damaged and became liable to pay for it. He doesn't have any money to pay. Well, if you don't have money to pay, then you have to take from your land. If you have land, you have to sell the land and pay for the damage that you caused. Since you own land, so if you can't pay with money, so pay with land. Either give him the land or sell the land and give him the money for it. Question the Gemara, right? Just give one example of the different questions that arise from this law. Let's say a person damaged, he became responsible to pay. He has no money, so he should pay with his land. What happens? He sold the land. And I said, well, I sold it already. I can't, so what can I do? I don't know land to pay you, no money to pay you, and sorry. Maybe if I get money later, I'll pay you. So we say that, no, the person who then got damaged, according to many opinions, can go to the person who bought the land and say, I'm sorry, but the land is responsible to me, because before it was sold to you, it already was supposed to be my land, to take it away from him, since he has to pay me for the damage, so therefore I can take the land away from you, because you bought it, you shouldn't have bought it, because it was already obligated to pay me with that land. He has no cash to pay, he has to pay with the land. You bought it, you have to give it to me. That's one of the interesting things that we're talking about. How about a child who damages? before it's bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah, they damage. So we can't force a person who's not bar mitzvah yet to do anything, not obligated to keep the laws of the Torah yet until they become bar bas mitzvah. But how about once he does become, is he obligated to pay for the damage they did when he was younger, before his bar mitzvah? Whole question about that. And something to think about. It's a different sources in the Gemara that he has to pay for damage. The parents don't have to pay for the damage that their children do. So if the thing, animal they own, they have to pay for the damage that they own, but the parent does not own their child. Therefore, if the child does damage, the parent is not obligated to pay. So he sure it's a nice thing to do, since the child did the wrong thing. But we cannot force them to pay for the damage of a child. The child himself, when he grows up, that's a different story. Does he have to pay for what he damaged when he was a child? That time he was not obligated. So we go back and say, well, now you became obligated to keep the laws. You have to pay for the damage you did before. The argument is, well, no, because at the time I did it, there was not there. He'll say, I was not obligated at that time. I was not by mitzvah yet. So it's another question in the Gemara. So we can go all night about different scenarios that we're talking about, but I think I gave more or less an idea of we have to be careful of how we conduct ourselves, because if we damage with our bodies to somebody, even though we didn't mean to do it, still we have to pay for it. And we have to be careful if we own a dog, make sure the dog does not damage. If we throw something in the Rishus Rabbi public domain, we put something there that does not belong, and someone trips on it, then we'll have to pay for it. And then the fire, if we make a fire in their own possession, people sometimes burn their leaves, sometimes some places they burn the leaves in the fall, and they make a fire to burn the leaves, and the fire goes and some the sparks shoot out and go to somebody else's property and burns it, then we're probably have to pay for that. Have to be careful. So this is something that many people are not careful about. And there's different, especially throwing things down on the ground where people are walking and somebody could trip or fall on it. That's something that happens all the time. And we don't want to be among those statistics about the people falling on things that are thrown into the public domain. So that's more of an idea of what we have to be careful about when it comes to damages. And many people don't realize that. Well, I didn't do it. My animal did it. My fire did it. The pit did it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I direct action to damage. And here we say, even if they did not do direct damage, but you still have to pay for it anyway.